Welcome to Spill Your Milk, the podcast where infant feeding, lactation, and orofacial development come together in insightful yet casual conversations.
We're your hosts, Nicole Edwin and Kayla Richardson, speech-language pathologists and international board-certified lactation consultants.
We're here to help you navigate the world of infant feeding, airway health, and holistic wellness. Whether you're a seasoned parent, expecting your first baby, or a professional working with babies, this podcast is for you.
From breastfeeding and bottle feeding tips to developmental feeding and body work, we're tackling it all. Plus, we'll share some real stories from families and interview experts across the field.
So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's spill some milk. Hi, we're back.
We're back.
I'm excited. Always excited.
I know, I am too.
We're going to talk about me today.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I think so. We'll unpack the journey from 10 years ago. It's wild that was 10 years ago, actually, is how I feel about it.
I know, it really is hard to just think about how much life has passed in that amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're going to tell my first feeding story, my journey with my first. Because it wasn't the one that brought me to doing this work necessarily, but it was the one that humbled me and changed me. Right?
Humbled you. Okay, dig deep.
Yeah,
I want to understand what you mean. How and why were you humbled?
Well, I got to set the stage, right? So
okay.
I was 26. Is that right? No, I was 27. Maybe I was 26. I can't math in my head. That's ridiculous. So pretty fresh out of grad school. Living in Tennessee at the time. My first job right out of grad school as a speech pathologist was in an outpatient clinic, and I was specifically learning feeding, from the get-go. So I was already consistently working in the feeding therapy realm, mostly with kids that were 1 or older. And even at that time before I was pregnant or anything, I was it would be really cool if I also had lactation training.
So you feel like the seed was planted really early on before even you had kids?
Kind of, but I don't think the passion was there. I think I was just that's an interesting combination of skills. I honestly, if I'm being honest about it, at that stage and age of my life, I just was kind of obsessed with learning and getting certifications and trying to be the very best professional I could be. So I think maybe that's where it kind of came from. So I remember looking into that, and then I got super confused, of course, and anybody who has gone to get their lactation certification knows what I'm talking about. It's, you go look up what you're supposed to do and you're this doesn't make any sense. And so I kind of put it to the side. But early in pregnancy, I attended the ASHA convention.
Okay.
And there was a seminar that was probably an hour long. And it was about combining lactation and feeding in the NICU. I couldn't tell you a single thing I learned from that. But as someone who was freshly pregnant and determined to breastfeed, I thought I had it.
What?
Yeah, I thought what I learned in that hour at an ASHA convention was going to prepare me for what was to come. But also, no one on my care team when I was pregnant said, you should take a breastfeeding class or you should hire a lactation consultant. You should get support. You should learn more about this. And I just thought I knew. I thought I had it. I help people feed their kids all the time. Why wouldn't I be able to feed my own? But I did know that without a doubt, I wanted to breastfeed my baby. And you and I have talked about this before, but the reason was very innate. I was not breastfed. I had not been exposed to breastfeeding. I just knew that is how I wanted to feed my baby. And that is what I was going to do. And it's natural. So why would I not be able to do it? Adorable. So cute.
It's so cute.
So adorable. So, Evelyn was born via C-section. It was a planned C-section. Well, common theme is if I knew what I knew today, she wouldn't have been a C-section baby. I mean, maybe she would have ended up being one anyway, but I wouldn't.
We do know that you like things planned and in control.
I do, yeah. And so that sounded lovely to me.
I bet.
I was yeah, but I wouldn't do it again.
Was it presented to you like, hey, we should do this, or this is an option, or how did that come into play?
It was recommended because I had had a surgery on my hip, my right hip, a little over a year prior. I had a labral tear that was honestly just a result of like a congenital like impingement. And so they had repaired that, but several months into my pregnancy, I started to have pain again. And of course, they didn't want to do any imaging because I was pregnant, which is the right thing to do. But my OB at the time was like, I'm really concerned that if I give you an epidural during a vaginal delivery and we pull your leg back,
Okay.
that I'm going to injure you further.
Okay. This seems reasonable, right?
It did seem reasonable, but then, and I guess it's because of what I know now, I ended up having to have a
Right.
surgery anyway. Yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it was just kind of like, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
a quick,
Like,
like, we should,
I can see the rationalization behind that between both professional and you,
mhm.
and the other part of me that's like, screw that. Like, I don't care.
Yeah, like me today would be like, whatever, like whatever, and we'll deal with that after.
Yeah.
And it always cracks me up too, because I hope at some point we'll have like a pelvic floor PT
Oh
on
my
here,
gosh.
but you're gonna know what I mean when I say like she was like, oh well, we'll just do a C-section, and then that way we'll be able to schedule it, and you'll know exactly when the baby's coming, and you won't pee yourself when you laugh like the rest of us. And now I'm like, that's not why that happens.
It's just like the theory between if you breastfeed, your boobs are going to sag, but that actually comes from pregnancy hormones.
Yeah. So looking back on it, I'm kind of like, I feel like it was an easy out into a C-section for that physician. And because I didn't have strong opinions about delivering vaginally, and I do like that control and I do like the planning and like know what's coming next, like it did make sense. And that was the decision that was made and that's what we did and it's what it is. But we know how C-section can contribute to feeding challenges. So just, it's not the decision I would make again knowing what I know now. We'll just leave it at that. Can't change it and
Right.
that's fine. So she is born, and I think the entire process in general of birth was like very traumatizing to me anyway. I didn't get to hold her right away. And nothing big happened. It was just how they did it. Like they gave her to Dan, they held her by my head. I said, "Hi, baby."
Right.
And then they took her. And then like by the time they wheeled me into the recovery room, like our moms were in the room before I even had held my baby. Like there just was no like there was a disconnect there. It
Like,
wasn't a great experience.
where's the consideration of mom right here? Like, who's the priority?
Yeah, it was kind of wild when I look back on it. And then it was like a smaller hospital and a baby friendly hospital and like at a time where I don't really know how that's going now, that baby friendly initiative, but like they just were
I
not doing a
just
good job.
I just had that thought while you said that. It used to be such a big thing and such a big strong push, and now I'm like, I don't think I've heard that pop up on my radar anytime recently.
No, me neither. So, but it was like the basic stuff. Like they didn't offer to take her to the nursery at all. They didn't offer a pacifier, like all those things that were like they're seemingly good ideas, but without the education of why they were happening, it just felt like a little cold. So latching hurt right away. Very painful. And the lactation consultant came in, and what I remember is her giving me some positioning coaching. And then it was just a whole bunch of repetition of like, well, that hurts. And she's shallow. Unlatch her. If it hurts, it's not right. Try again.
And what did your brain say then?
You're not doing it right.
Right.
Like, that's what I was hearing. And usually when I tell this story, I'm like, I don't know if that's what really was like, that's how I remember it. Like hearing, like, well,
Right.
you're not doing it right. If it hurts, you're not doing it right. And again, love to give people grace. Like, she probably, I hope, was just being like, it shouldn't hurt.
Right.
So reposition again, but what I definitely heard was like, you're not doing it right.
And you're not the only person to have that.
Yeah, and I think because I've seen that on the other side is why I try to, give that person grace because I'm like, but like also from a professional standpoint, if there are professionals listening, like your words matter
Right.
a lot. So And then she had lost more than 10% of her body weight. So they come rolling in with the pump.
But wait, this is in the hospital still?
This is in the hospital still.
How many days did you stay?
What do they usually keep you for a C-section? Like 3,
I don't know.
4? I know you wouldn't know. They keep you for several days.
Okay.
I think it's 3 or 4. It makes me feel like a dinosaur that I don't know. Like it was that long ago. Like I have no idea.
I think the standards are just different now, too.
Yeah, yeah. But it definitely like that she had like lost more than 10% and it was still at the point where I was producing colostrum because I know that no one educated me about that. And so I thought like the little droplets that I was getting
It's inadequate.
was inadequate. Yeah, so I kind of had already had it in my head there during that experience that like it wasn't making enough for her or I just wasn't doing it right. So it was just kind of a bad start. And then the pain, I don't really remember what happened after that. We went home not supplementing and like not pumping, like for the reason of weight loss. So clearly we got back on track after just a little bit of supplementation and there was no formula supplementation. So clearly it was enough. But the pain never stopped. And I know that they gave me like the phone number to call for outpatient support. And I definitely waited way too long to do that. And I think it was just like, I thought I was doing it wrong.
How
And
long is way too long for you?
truly don't know when I went back in there. Definitely within like the first couple of months. So I know that I was like cracked. I was bleeding. I was in excruciating pain. And she wanted to eat. I mean, I know now she was pretty inefficient.
Right.
Every hour and a half, every hour and a half, it was just like really, really frequent. And I mean, the dagger eyes that would like probably come out of me when someone would be like, I think she's hungry.
It's that dread.
And I'd be like, okay. Or like, I just fed her. You know what I mean? Like it was so painful. And it wasn't this like beautiful experience that I thought I was going to have. And so, and within all of this too, there were definitely times where I was like, okay, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to pump and we're going to give her bottles because, my nipples need a break from the pain. So I was kind of managing that on my own and using my own problem solving skills. And we were getting the job done for sure. But I did go back for like an outpatient visit and I did feel very dismissed regarding like my discomfort. They watched us feed. They said it looked good, air quotes. They said it looked good. They did a weighted feed. She transferred well. Her growth was on track. So the only real problem was that she was eating every 90 minutes around the clock, including overnight, and I had nipple damage.
So you have a problem, but she doesn't have a problem, is what I'm hearing.
Correct. And never was there like well, this could be why. It was just, this is what it is.
No solution.
No solution. The pain resolved eventually. I want to say it was like 6 to 8 weeks. But what I wouldn't give to go look at that baby with my eyeballs and brain now.
Right?
Because I for sure know she was so tight. Like I remember being like, I thought I was going to have to like support her head more.
She's so strong.
She's so strong. And then I also remember, I love telling the story because it's so funny to me now that she at 2 weeks old rolled over from her belly to her back. And I was like, "Ah, advanced." I just had no clue.
Right?
I mean, we got the job done, but I just cannot believe the way that I just pushed through that pain because I was just so determined to breastfeed her. And we did it. But I just don't, I know that I was struggling with postpartum depression. And I knew it at the time eventually, because I did eventually get on some medication. I was very confused about that because I thought that postpartum depression meant that like I wasn't connected to my baby or that I would like want to hurt her. And I didn't feel that. I was just numb. And then having these bouts of just like crying and like Dan being like, what is wrong? And I'm like, I have no idea.
You don't, yeah, clueless.
I don't know what's wrong. but I don't feel like myself. I'm not happy. Like, this is awful. So I don't know, we are constantly having that conversation about like, how much feeding difficulties can contribute to that and like vice versa and that like connection there. So that was definitely going on. But I did get on some medication for a while and it did help, but then I started having some like weird side effects. So I got off of it and I don't know, we made it through. I wish that I had had someone being like I wish I had hired an outpatient lactation consultant to come to my house. I mean, I just didn't know to do that. And even when I was in it postpartum, it's like I couldn't.
Right. You even think about now how hard it is for a lot of us to even pick up the phone without having any concerns. So then when you get trapped in those feelings, it's just
Yeah.
there's no way out.
Yeah, and so one of the lessons and one of the things I'm always, and even before I was doing this work, and like my friend, like I was one of the first to have a baby, and of my friends, and I think the friends of mine who came after, and I would be like, you need to be prepared for how hard feeding can be. Like, and still, one of my biggest messages is like, get a prenatal, learn before, get support before. Like, that is something I really, really took from that experience. Because even after all of that, I didn't really think, like, this isn't normal. Like, my brain really hadn't gotten there yet. I was just like, okay, well, that hurt for a good 2 months. Feels better. We're still eating really frequently. And then because I was so, like, depressed, I was like, I wanted to go back to work really early.
Was like that, this, that's
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah. So I don't remember how long. Like, I don't remember what week it was when I went back, but it was definitely sooner than I was supposed to. And she would not take a bottle.
Now what?
So again, you get online, you read all the stuff, and it's like, oh, it's just a preference. Like, try all the stuff that people say to do about that, right? Someone else has to give her the bottle, and you need to leave the house. She's not going to take it from you. But she had taken one before, lost the
How old was
skill.
she then? Oh, well, you're not sure. Like,
I'm not sure, but I do know it was before, like, she should have lost the reflexes to
right.
drive her.
Right, because we know that's like between 3 and 4 months, closer than the 4 month.
It was totally before that.
Yeah.
So that was very confusing as well. But, like, she just, like, wouldn't take it. I literally dropped her off at daycare, which the daycare was, like, right across the street from the skilled nursing facility that I was working at the time. So
Great.
I think I was just like, if I need to clock out and come feed her, like, I will.
Right.
But the daycare providers were like, not our first rodeo. We'll figure it out. And we have some other bottles here. Do you mind if we try them if like this one doesn't work out? And I was like, sure. So she ends up taking a Tommy Tippy.
That's what Alex took too.
And for those of you listening, we're laughing because the Tommy Tippy is a wide mouth bottle that has a very like drastic, like it looks like a boob. And so what we know is even infants with good function pull really shallow onto those bottles. And so it makes total sense that my baby, who I know was tongue-tied and holding a ton of tension and latching very shallow, took to that because that's what was easy for her to do. So it's just hilarious to look back on it because if someone else now were telling me that these things were going on for them,
It would make so much sense.
it would make so much sense and I would know exactly how to fix it. You know? So I don't think she was never really a super efficient eater. Always small, frequent feeds. My supply was good. She was gaining well, even though she's my 5%er. Still is though. So that wasn't atypical. But we did switch to formula about 8 months. And also makes me laugh because the reason that I made that switch was because I thought that she was weaning. I thought that she was self-weaning. Could you guess why? Your baby is that old. What does he do all the time, constantly while he's breastfeeding?
Oh, because he's distracted?
Yeah. Yeah. She'd pop off, she'd pop back on, and it just kind of
Oh,
felt like to me like she wasn't getting a full feed and she wasn't enjoying herself anymore. And like it just felt like not, I thought that's not how it was supposed to be. And so she wasn't doing that on the bottle. And so I was like, oh, she must be done. Okay.
oh wow. I didn't know that about you. I knew you like around the timeline that you weaned, but I didn't know why.
Yeah. So it was like,
Wow, how does that feel now?
I don't have like necessary, like, I regret it because I wish that someone would have been like, no, babies that's developmentally appropriate. Like babies that age are very destructive feeders. They come on, they come off. Like that's kind of how it looks for a while, and that's okay. So I have regrets in the sense that I didn't know that, and I wish I did. I wish someone would have said that to me. I don't really have any regrets about giving her formula. I just
Yeah.
don't have negative feelings about formula.
Right.
I think that sometimes formula is necessary. And I think that as long as everybody involved is okay with giving formula, like it's a good source of nutrition. So I don't regret like that she had formula, or I don't think that she's like unhealthier now because she had formula or anything like that. I just wish I had been better supported and better educated, I think.
Like, yeah, if you wish you had the knowledge. Right.
Hmm.
I know how many families come in here and they're describing all of these experiences, and you just have to keep telling them that's a normal thing. Like it's normal that your child is doing this. And sometimes that's hard because so many things about the developmental stage of infancy is hard as a parent. It's demanding.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think I just like at that age and stage of my life, it would have meant everything to me for someone to be like, this is completely normal and you're doing a good job. So I do think, yes, what you just said, like sometimes it is hard because like when you're struggling, right, for someone to be like, this is normal. Like specifically, I think like when babies are feeding frequently or, they're not sleeping through the night and whatever, and you're tired and we have to be like, this is normal. It's just really hard. I think on the flip side of that, I've had plenty of situations where I had one the other day actually with like a newborn baby where the mom was kind of like, well, she does show me when she's hungry and she does show me when she's full, but about 30 to 40% of the time she seems unsatisfied and she wants to like come back to breast. And I said, that sounds pretty normal. Like that sounds like pretty typical like newborn feeding patterns. And she said, that's all I needed to hear. That I can continue to just respond to that and that can be normal and there's nothing wrong.
She was just doubting, thinking something was wrong.
Yeah, and in this specific situation, it was a second baby, but the first baby was like a NICU stay and prematurity. So she
Yeah.
hadn't had that experience yet. But I think that is what I needed in that moment, like where I thought she was self-weaning. I needed someone to be like, oh, this is so normal. And I would have been like, oh, cool. Okay. And we probably would have kept going.
Right? Ugh.
But again, like we made it through 8 months. And even though all of that was really, really hard, I didn't have like a goal of how long I was going to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't even know. Maybe I was feeling kind of done because I don't think back on that weaning and being like with a lot of negativity. I just look back on it and like, oh, you really perceived that wrong.
Like, oh, this is what's happening now, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So ultimately I didn't. I mean, I was like, oh, that really hurt. And I will have another episode where we talk about my second because that really changed everything for me. But it was just like I needed that first experience to set the stage
Right.
because when I tell you guys about the second one, like I was quick to be like, this hurts and I need help.
Help.
So like, you know what I mean? Like it's like your first kid teaches you things,
Right.
and then your second one gets the benefits of that because you've learned something.
Yes. Our first ones survive.
It's just the
Oh,
trial
bless
baby,
them.
Yeah, it's just the trial baby. But it's still so funny to me that prior to even having a baby, I had a thought, oh, maybe I should become a lactation consultant too. And then that whole experience didn't catapult me into that yet.
It didn't?
No, no. I think it
Fascinating.
was still rattling around in my head a little, but also professionally, I had moved on from pediatrics. I was working with adults in a skilled nursing facility like PRN. And then just where our life was. Isn't that funny? I
I think,
hated it.
well, the reason I laugh though is because we literally followed the same path because so was I.
That is funny. Okay, that is funny. So I kind of thought I was done with working with kids and feeding therapy. I was working in adult swallowing, and even though I wasn't happy in that job either, that definitely was not for me. I liked working with the people, but the setting and just the amount of times I was asked to do something unethical, like almost daily. I just knew that that was not for me. And then we also knew we were active duty Army at the time. Dan was active duty Army, and we knew that we would be leaving and moving to Alabama within the year, and that we wouldn't be there for long. So it just kind of like took a bit of a break. And truly, it wasn't until I had my second and had my experience with her that I kind of thought I was done being a speech therapist at all.
Really?
Yeah, I was really burnt out.
I think it's easy to do in our field, especially if you're in the wrong part of the field for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then I guess I didn't say the part where Dan deployed to Afghanistan when Evelyn was 5 months old.
Wait, that's kind of like a big chunk in there.
It just hit me. It just hit me. I was like, why wouldn't that have piqued your interest? You know what I mean? I was surviving. Yeah, he was
Hmm.
here when she was born, and then she was 5 months old. He deployed for almost a year. And then when he got back, we knew that we were going to be moving. So it was just, I think, a lot of life stuff like that really pulled me from
Hmm.
that professional mindset where I was like, I want to learn, I want to get more
Yeah.
certifications, I want to be really good at my job, to you just had a baby, you're living in a different state, and you're by yourself. So I was just in a season of
Right.
life. I wasn't ready
How
to.
long had you guys how long had you guys been there? Because I know the PCS life and it's like some bases you just develop more community than others. Where were you with that?
Yeah, so he was there before I was, because I was like finishing school and then I moved down there.
Oh,
We got married in September and I was pregnant 6 months later.
hmm. So pretty quick.
Yeah, and I really struggled to make friends and find community while we were there. And not
Hmm.
necessarily, I think I struggled, like, so we were there, and then eventually we moved to Alabama. We were there for like 7 months, which was very short term. And then I moved back to St. Louis after that. So I think that in general, I struggle to do that. Like, I made a whole bunch of friends in college, and it was just kind of proximity, I think. And then I moved out of state. I was away from all my friends, quickly moved into like, well, I'm pregnant and I'm going to have a baby. I definitely met a couple of good friends there, but yeah, I didn't feel super like tied into community there, I don't think.
Hmm.
Yeah. Which is also an interesting piece of that, of like how alone I felt and how, I didn't really know what
Well,
my resources were.
especially with postpartum depression, even it just makes you feel even
Yeah.
more isolated, and especially if you already essentially are.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, and even like that first year that I was down there, it was like I was so fresh out of school. I had gotten that job and I was working like 4 10-hour days. Who has time to meet friends and become part of a community when you're when you're
Yeah,
doing that?
I'm so
So,
glad we don't have to do that anymore.
oh my gosh, me too. That was crazy. That was crazy. But so yeah, so I was kind of just like I don't know. I was just in a different headspace and a different phase of my life. So I didn't have that
Yeah.
professional headset on per se.
Yeah.
I just was trying to figure it out. But then Audrey came along, and that's a conversation for another day. Because that
That little
one's a
tornado, I
doozy.
love her.
I know that's the one where I was just like, what's going on here?
She's here to change the world. I have zero doubts about
She
that.
is. She is. Yeah. Yeah. And like, we talk about this all the time. They are who they are because they do still teach me in those same ways, right? Because Evelyn's my oldest, and every milestone moving forward, she teaches me a little something, and then my second one comes along, and I've had an experience, and I can alter the way that I've done it. So, poor little test child. She's thriving. She thrives. She's
Yeah,
a good
she
little
does.
test child. She's very, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. That was it. And I don't know. I had like I don't think it was a very transformative experience in the sense of like becoming a parent. Like I said, it was very humbling. You don't know everything. You do not know everything.
You don't know everything
I
after
don't know
the
everything now.
fifth or the 10th kid.
I don't know everything now, you know? Like, so it was
Right.
very like the attitude I went in was like, I
Yeah.
got this. I know what I'm doing. It's natural. We're going to do it. I'm going to do it no matter what. I don't need any help.
That's just
Ugh.
naive. That's all.
Ugh. Hyper independence. I really struggled with that as a young woman. Like trauma responses, hyper independence. I did not need help from anyone. I got this. Let's go. So I don't know. It was just very humbling in the sense of like, yeah, you got a thing or two to learn. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was it.
I am so glad and sorry that you went through what you went through.
I know.
It's such a strange thing to say, but like we get it, you know.
I often will tell parents like in my treatment room, I'll like almost laugh about it. Like especially I try to like lighten up the mood, especially the ones that are in pain because I run into so many parents who are in that exact same spot. And without being like something's really wrong here, like I'll always say to them like you are not supposed to be in this much pain. And like there's a reason and we're going to figure out what that reason is and we are going to improve it. But I'll always be like, I'll tell them the story, like the shortened version of it. And I'll always be like, when I think back and look at that girl that I was, like, I laugh because I was just like, this is probably 10 out of 10 pain. My nipples are bleeding, but it's fine.
Wait,
What?
what does that laugh sound like? Like,
It's probably a very nervous laughter. Like,
right?
this is fine.
Right? Like sweating.
But it's just like the message that I'm giving them or trying to give them is like, listen, I've been right where you are. You do not have to endure this pain.
And how validating for them to be like, this isn't a necessary burden for you, and we're gonna figure this out and we're gonna get through this. This is going to end.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and the other piece from my experience with Evelyn that I always like a piece that I give to my patients is like, you know how I said like, oh, like the lactation consultant was like, well, if it hurts, it's wrong, unlatch her and try again, is that I see all the time, and I know what I was doing was correct, is like, you're doing all of the right things positionally. My baby could not.
Like she couldn't feed in those positions, or it didn't matter what position she was in, she just couldn't.
Well, I hope I can describe this from like an auditory standpoint without a visual. But if you're watching the video, I'm probably going to be moving my hands and showing a little bit. But, you know, we want a baby in alignment. We want them very close to your body. And we want to like start nipple to nose and we want their mouths to open, their chin, you know, that neck to extend back. She couldn't do that. So no matter how many times I lined her up the right way to initiate that latch correctly, her anatomy was restricted and she
Yep.
could not do it. So I am very quick to compliment a parent on their positioning. I'm like, you are doing all the right things. Here is why it still hurts, or here is why your baby is still shallow, because I know how much I internalized, well, you're not doing it right. Like,
I love how you just described that.
it's just like positioning isn't everything. It's a huge piece of the puzzle. Getting that right is a huge piece of the puzzle. But anatomically, if your baby is restricted from movement, you can line them up all the right ways. And it's still not going to be a deep latch. And it might hurt. And that's a red flag that something else is going on. But you know what we didn't talk about? So I know that she had ties because later down the road when she got older and after I'd had my experience with my second, I was like,
How many people do we get in our connect like that? And we're working with baby and they're like, wait a second. I went through this with their siblings. Do you see older kids?
or and then yourself, right? Like and then yourself, you're like, oh, wait, I have some of these symptoms. So she did get a tongue tie release when was she 5 or 6? Um, and she is an example of she had it done under general anesthesia because she was going in for adenoid removal.
Okay.
So what I did not hit on is what a crappy sleeper she was. That was like one of her main symptoms. I mean, her nervous system was a wreck. She could not be away from me, could not sleep. I mean, we were up every 2 hours at minimum into toddlerhood.
Which leaves your nervous system doing the same.
For real. And I did bring this up, to many times because at the beginning I just kept getting like, oh, it's developmental. It's okay that she's still waking, and to a certain extent there's some truth to that, right? We don't ever want
Right.
people thinking that it's normal for their babies to be sleeping 10 hours or whatever, and some of them do, but that's not the norm. So I think when she was about 4, I said to her pediatrician, have we reached a point where this is no longer developmental?
My gosh.
And she was like, yeah, like let's. And I get it because she wasn't like that classic presentation of like an airway problem and like a sleep problem. Like she wasn't like hanging with her mouth open and like, but I could hear the airway resistance while she was sleeping. Sometimes it was snoring, but it wasn't like a true snore. And by that time I knew that she had a tie and I knew that her tongue was resting low. So I went to an ENT, an ENT that I trusted in this area. We were in St. Louis by then, and kind of told him what we were dealing with. We did do a sleep study. It didn't come back that she had like apnea or anything. So no one really wanted to do anything about it, but I knew him well enough and he knew what I did for a living. And I said, hey, here's the deal. We've been sleeping poorly since infancy. I know she has a tongue tie. I can hear her breathing at night. And he was like, well, maybe like let's look at her adenoids. And so he scoped her and he was like, they are big. Like they could be causing an issue here. And he wasn't really on the page of like the tie being the issue, but that was like for me, I was like, that I know that could be kind of part of it. And so he was like, I do think that she's a good candidate for an adenoidectomy. And he said, and if you want, while she's under, I will release her tongue. So we did some myofunctional therapy surrounding that, and like she's been pretty good ever since.
I love
Mouth
that.
posture's better.
I mean, I don't love how long it took and how much you had to advocate. Like,
Yeah, but she's also a lesson in like how that can present
right.
down the road, And so
Exactly.
again, and she's not I have huge tonsils and my mouth's hanging open and I'm snoring all the time. But
Right.
all of the signs were there all along. And now, those things,
It
she's
just
got braces
shows.
on right now, but got great function.
It just shows, though, how something small can affect one child where another child needs a bigger impact to show. Like, just some are more sensitive to those changes or obstructions than others, So it's just, and that's why we look at each family so uniquely.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But it did make, like I said, it made a huge difference in her sleep. I mean, I had
Yeah.
always made the joke up to that point of like, I haven't slept through the night in 6 years.
Not a joke.
No.
Just one of those nervous laughs again.
Yeah, nervous laughs. Yes, exactly. But yeah, that's her story. So that's where it all began. We will come back on another day and I'll tell you guys all about my Audrey. So my
I can't wait for that
takeaway,
one. Yes.
takeaway is getting help from the get-go. Like if you're expecting, even if it's not your first baby, that next one's going to teach you something new. Like get the support and trusting your instincts and like not just accepting like if something feels wrong, it
Trust your gut again.
yep, it's going to come back to that a lot. I have a feeling.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right,
Thank you for sharing.
of course, my pleasure. All right, bye guys.
We'll talk soon. Thanks for tuning in to Spill Your Milk. We hope today's episode brought you some clarity, comfort, and practical tips for your feeding journey.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with fellow parents and professionals who might need a little extra support.
You can also follow us on Instagram at SpillYourMilkPod for more tips, resources, and behind-the-scenes content.
Until next time, remember, every drop of effort you're putting in makes a difference. Keep spilling your milk, and we'll see you soon.